First of all,
Te manga o te whare, tēnā koutou katoa. I just want to take us through a bit of history, because we've been talking a lot about the origins of this piece of legislation. And actually, in 1989, the New Zealand Department of Health's Toxic Substances Board recommended that cigarettes be sold only in white packs with black text, so no colours and logos. So in fact, we've been crediting Australia this whole time for actually leading the way. We actually had the idea. And so I want to acknowledge that at that time, Canada in the 1990s had a parliamentary committee that too looked at the issue of plain packaging or standardised packaging. For them, it was part of a reasonable step in the overall strategy to reduce tobacco consumption. So we're here today because as a country we've committed to smoke-free 2025. And so I want to commend the Minister for the bill. It's a bill that we've been waiting a long time to debate, but this year we've debated two bills, I think, that have substantially impacted on not only smoking rates, but particularly ongoing smoking of young people. And in fact, from the research, it's young people who will benefit the most from this plain packaging legislation. So in Clause 5 of the bill, the purpose is about to regulate and control the marketing, advertising and promotion of tobacco products. There's an explicit an explicit understanding that actually tobacco consumption is incredibly harmful. And so this bill is intended to improve public health. And so those of us who have spoken today are, I believe, advocates for, on the whole, public health, because we know that there are some products that are killing us, and this is one of those products. So on average, 5,000 people die every year who smoke. We've got over 550,000 smokers in this country. 5,000 people is a heck of a lot of people dying every year from a preventable practice, I'll call it. We also have 350 people die from secondhand smoking. So those who don't smoke, who think this bill isn't relevant to them, well, actually it is. And we have 70 babies every year die from sooty, and that's associated to the environments that our children are growing up in. For Māori and Pacific, the rates are a lot higher. So our prevalence rate in New Zealand is 20%. For Māori, it's 34%. For Pacific, it's 26%. The interesting thing to note is that currently the Australian prevalence rate is just over 16%. But 3 years ago, when they brought plain packaging in, it was like ours, 20%. So there is evidence that this piece of legislation will actually reduce smoking by 3%. I find the whole debate, really interesting about the timeframes about plain packaging, and it's just because I've looked at other pieces of legislation. So to New Zealand First, I want to acknowledge your supplementary order papers, because in France and the UK, from May this year, actually, they brought in standardised or plain packaging. But in terms of non-plain packages, in France, they've allowed until the 1st of January 2017 to sell the non-plain packaged. Yeah, so that's a 9-month lead-in. And in the UK, they actually legislated for a year. So you can still sell the non-plain packaged cigarettes up until May 2017. That's how other jurisdictions have dealt with this particular issue, and I just thought it was my responsibility to also highlight that no problem. So the evidence about the effectiveness, and there is a lot of evidence about the effectiveness. So Cancer Control Australia particularly focus on the decrease in youth uptake. And I've just found another survey that actually reinforced that the decrease in uptake from young people was also relevant to Torres Strait and Aboriginal youth. And so there is generic application of this particular tool to decrease the uptake of smoking and the consumption of smoking by young people right across the board. So we would anticipate that Māori, Pacific, Asian, other groups in society will benefit from this particular initiative. And what the evidence basically said was that, Mr Chair, thank you Mr Chair, was that the plain packaging or standardised packaging actually makes the whole product less attractive. And that's what we want, and I think that's the whole point for the marketers and advertisers of tobacco, is to make these amazing packs that people want to put on the table because they're proud to be associated with them. And that's why this piece of legislation is so important. And there were also negative perceptions and feeling about the pack and smoking it, excuse me, in a public place. And so young people actually hid the pack. They didn't want people to know that this was the pack that they were smoking. And it decreased their consumption of tobacco around others, and that they actually chose to go without, and so it decreased consumption, and it also increased the thoughts to give up. And I think that's the part of the equation now that I want to highlight and take the opportunity with the Minister, because all these initiatives are fantastic, but what we have to make sure is that people who want to quit have the resources to do so. So I'm hoping that there will be a corresponding increase in the availability of smoke-free or auahi kore resources, so that those who want to give up are helped to give up. And I know from experience that those tools from my father's experience included going to a hypnotist. It also includes, patches. Some people need counselling. Some people actually need to be giving up smoking in team events, and there's a little initiative called Wero that's been incredibly successful, and Rugby League actually piloted this challenge, and what it enabled actually was families and communities to give up collectively. Because that's the other part of the deal, is that we want families to be smoke-free, because we know that young people who grow up in families where two parents smoke are 40% more likely to smoke. And so all of this package, Minister, will translate into us becoming smoke-free by 2025. And I think what you've heard today from my colleague Kevin Haig actually is an opportunity for us to work collaboratively across the House. You've got a lot of supporters of this particular kaupapa, and so we would welcome an opportunity to meet with you, to meet with formally, so that we're part of the solution, so that it doesn't matter who's in government, actually, that this kaupapa is taken into the future. And I know that there are opportunities coming in terms of the e-cigarettes, and you and your ministry have responded to some evidence about these different tools that help people to give up. And so I am very excited about this piece of legislation going through the House, and I can't not think and comment about the passion of the Honourable Tariana Turia. This really was her legacy, not only for the Parliament, but for the people of Aotearoa. And I know she did it because she realised that as a tool of colonisation, actually smoking has been incredibly pervasive on the lives of Māori. And so I want to acknowledge her. I want to acknowledge Hone Harawira when he was a member of the Māori Affairs Select Committee, and Tau, who chaired that Māori Affairs Select Committee, because they too were incredibly passionate and committed to addressing the negative consequences that tobacco continues to have on the lives of Māori. So I'm particularly pleased because this initiative, as I've said before, really is targeted at young people. But in addition to young people, I do want to say that smokers generally have been turned off. And one of the most important things are the graphic health warnings on these packs. People need to see the reality of what smoking can do, because then they can take some responsibility and make an informed decision about whether they continue to smoke or not. But we also know that cigarettes are a drug, and people need help. It's not just about the mind, but when the body craves smoking, then that's a different story. And some people are strong enough to go cold turkey, but actually what we know is that people have to try often more than 10 times before they actually give up. So it's having the resilience again and again and again to give up, which is why we need to provide them with as many tools as possible so that they actually can be auahi kore smoke-free. Because if we do this for this generation, actually we're doing it for future generations. And so that's what I'm most passionate about. And I'm passionate about this issue because in Manurewa, I think we've got one of the highest rates of smoking, over 50%. But I'm visiting one of my schools next week, James Cook High School.
Pottle Williams.
Mr Chair, thank you very much.